Okay, so we have our test on Thursday of next week, or this week here coming up, and so we're at the end. Today we're going to finish up these current events and then deal with some of the issues that are in your book. And your book is relatively current as it was laid out, but there are some of these issues have certainly had some more recent developments that we may want to deal with. So let's have prayer, then we'll begin. When we so let's pray. Father, we thank you for your special presence here, that you are helping us in this class and helping us as we finish out this material, that you will show us yourself and help us to see all that we are involved in here in our country at this present time, and that you are certainly in control of everything, and we pray for your special grace and blessing. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Also, anyone who has any work, whether it is terms or video review, those types of things, today at midnight, that's when they're due. Very few of such things are still outstanding, and but thought I would mention. Okay, so this was the very last slide that I did 2 years ago because he was just coming into office, and there wasn't much had happened yet. Of course, Vice President Harris, the first female vice president, first woman of color, if you want to say that, to be vice president. And of course, Joe Biden, who was elected president. We can say that Joe Biden is known for being born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, but when he was only a few months old, his family moved to Delaware. And there, he got involved in politics at a very early age, and was elected in 1972 to the United States Senate when he was only 29 years of age. Now, if anyone is familiar with the Constitution, you have to be 30 to be a senator. That's because he would turn 30 between the time of the election and when he was sworn in January. So he is one of the youngest senators ever in the history of the United States. And he won the election partly by suggesting that the incumbent senator was too old to continue serving. So he served as a senator right up until he was sworn in as president or vice president, and that would have been in 2008.
How old is he now?
He is 80 years old. Right now, he's the oldest serving president. He's 80 years old, and he actually was elected senator from Delaware while he was running for vice president, and so was sworn in for his final term at the beginning of January, and then served as senator until he resigned the day before he became vice president. So that held that seat in Democratic hands, and then the Democratic governor would appoint a successor. So he served as vice president for 8 years. Then during the Trump years, he was out of politics for 4 years. And then he was elected president. His first initiative was the Build Back Better plan, trying to suggest that the Republicans under President Trump had destroyed America through loss of jobs, economy, COVID issues, all of that. And he couldn't get it passed in one big omnibus bill, but eventually, with the support of Joe Manchin, who was the one senator who was holding out on this, they divided this up into 3 different plans. The American Rescue Plan, which I need to put the parenthesis back up there, ARP, was a COVID pandemic relief bill that was designed to be sort of a stimulus bill and provided other governmental subsidies to deal with trying to correct the inequities of the pandemic. Then the American Jobs Plan, a proposal to address long-term neglected infrastructure needs and reduce America's contribution to destructive effects of climate change. Will eventually deal with issues of trying to convert the American vehicles and appliances or whatever to electric instead of using some other sort of fuel. It's the same basic plan, American Jobs Plan, that is fighting against gas stoves, trying to convert all cars by a certain time to being electric. And anyway, all of that sort of thing is part of this. And then the American Family Plan, a proposal to fund a variety of social policies, initiatives, some of which, like paid family leave, had never before been enacted nationally in the United States. And there were lots of different stimulus plans that went into effect both for business and for individuals, significant government spending, and as a result, the main effect of this was soaring inflation. And people were putting little stickers like this on gas pumps pointing at the price, which in some states also became illegal as a because it's littering, it's defacing of other people's property, all kinds of things. But what this does is it demonstrates that several pieces of infrastructure really went up in price. Things maybe like energy, electricity and so forth, food, but also there were scarcities and supply chain issues that resulted from a lot of this that never were true before. And there was increase in cars, especially used cars, went up in price. Hotel rooms, even other things you would think wouldn't be affected by this, significant increases in cost. So that was one of his major accomplishments, that he caused massive inflation, and then he passed another bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, which basically just made the problem worse. Now, foreign policy for President Biden, growing issues that are developing all across the country. You have the Afghanistan withdrawal. I looked on the official White House website for accomplishments or things that have happened, and they just said that he ended the war in Afghanistan. Well, yes, he did. But he left behind for the terrorists nearly $10 billion in military equipment. When he left, there was a significant loss of life and American prestige in the process. This is pictures of people trying to figure out a way of stopping these planes from taking off so they could get on them and be rescued out of Afghanistan. This didn't have to be such a disaster. Now, probably the Afghanistan war did go on too long. It was a never-ending pit that you could not get out of. But the method of using, the way of getting out was a problem. There's a growing China threat, and President Trump had suggested that China was our biggest problem, which no one seemed to care about. But China is really flexing their international muscles and have a significant economic support that they are definitely the emerging world power. And it's going to be difficult to figure out exactly what the United States can do about them. Climate crisis. At least for President Biden, the climate crisis is the biggest, well, at least up until 2 days ago, was the largest single threat, existential threat to the United States. We're even converting our military equipment to electric vehicles, electric tanks, electric transport machines, because it's more important to save the environment than actually fight wars appropriately. Because you'd have to put up a white flag when you have to recharge your tank. That might take several hours, but we know that this is one of their biggest issues. And then Ukraine, and let's face it, young people, your age or younger, many people in the that would just be in the general population really believe that the world will end in 30 years because of climate change. And if you really believe that you have no hope, no future, you will do things like throw soup on paintings or other things like that, because you really do believe that you're dead if people don't make changes. And since they see themselves as having no vested interest in the world as it is, what difference does it make if the changes also create catastrophe? Because going the way we are is going to create catastrophe anyway. So there's no point in even having any interest in real future. That is a situation. And then, of course, the Ukraine conflict. This war, I'm sure, was thought to be something that would have been over quickly. The Russians were not thinking that the Ukrainians would be able to resist them, that their military would just overwhelm them in no time. And the United States and the Western democracies are supporting them in an indirect manner. Enough to keep them afloat, not enough to ensure that they'll win. And the Russians are probably being rearmed and supplied by the Chinese in order to ensure that they have the power to see this through. But this here is a potential major problem in the future. Domestic issues is that immigration is truly getting out of hand. Upwards of 10,000 illegal crossings every day. And now, which I'm not 100% sure why this is a problem, Title 42, however that's named, which was a COVID-era restriction that required that there was some delay in processing, that is expired. It expired yesterday or 2 days ago. And so there is an unbelievable surge of immigration. They were sort of invited to come, while at the same time, people don't understand what is the main issue with immigration. One of the main problems is that America is not a country. I mean, any country could say their culture or their infrastructure is being overwhelmed by an influx of people that are coming in wave after wave. And there was a day in the turn of the century, the last century, from the 1800s, when there were significantly more people coming across the border, if you're looking at Ellis Island or any other place, and there really wasn't any infrastructure or helping of people. Now, there were regulations. You had all kinds of rules you had to follow, and sometimes people were not allowed in the country. If you had certain diseases, if you had certain this or that, you weren't allowed in. And so many times the cruise lines, the companies that brought people to New York would self-screen them, because if there were people who were sent back, it was the travel company's responsibility to transport them back at their expense. So they wanted to stop as many people as they could from ever getting on the boat in London or Paris or somewhere else. They did transfer these people to other places around the country. This is why, if you go in many parts of the country, there are communities that are primarily Irish or Dutch or Russian, and they're in Iowa or Michigan because the government sent people to certain areas all around the country. The coal regions of Pennsylvania have had lots of immigration, but there was full employment in America, and if these people wanted to live another day, they had to get work. And they were usually willing to work wherever they happened to be. Not that these people aren't industrious, but there's just so many of them. And we have no idea who they are, and there could be lots and lots of undesirable, dangerous people that are mixed in with them. And today, with all of the issues of disease and so forth, this is a big problem. So this isn't it. But another problem with American immigration is that America is not a country that is tribal in its orientation. It is an intellectual experiment that if you want to be an American, you have to be willing to affirm the founding principles of the country. It's almost like joining a church or some other organization. People who affirm that are American as anyone who has ever been born here. This whole situation just it breaks that down, and they are not in league with those situations. Another issue that he has is to transfer to EV material, whether it is electric cars or redesigning all kinds of other appliances and transitioning so that you have to get new microwaves, new coffee pots, new whatever. Many of the appliance companies appreciated these rules at the beginning because it gave them guaranteed business, that everyone had to replace all of the things that they had. And when the regulations change in a few years, you'll have to buy new ones. That's something that they would like. But the problem is that there is an issue of energy, because not only that, when we're dealing with electricity, but electricity isn't produced out of nowhere. It's either produced with nuclear power, which people don't like, the environmentalists don't like that, or it might be produced with wind power, but they don't necessarily like that, because, there's a tendency for little animals that fly through the air to get caught in the propeller. That's a problem. Or hydroelectric power. All of these things have some environmental issue that produces electricity. Or you can burn coal or oil or natural gas, and that means you have to use fossil fuels to make the electricity that you're using. Lots and lots of fossil fuels to make the electricity that you're using. So I don't know that all of this electric cars and electric toasters and electric whatever is actually going to reduce carbon emissions at all. It may even increase it. One other thing is that the price of energy is going up artificially, partly because cheap sources of energy are being taxed or regulated out of existence, so that expensive kinds of energy seem cheap, even though they are not. And that's done on purpose. Now, this is a picture of President Biden while he was giving a State of the Union address just 3 days ago, or 2 days ago, in which he declared that the greatest threat to America is white supremacy. I did not know that. I thought it was climate change. But white supremacy is the greatest threat to the world. I just think that he should resign to let the person of color be president, and that would end this whole problem.
Oh, snap.
Wow.
Man,
You
wow.
should get out.
Yeah, I mean,
One of those.
So that is an issue here. That we are moving in a direction where a re-segregation of the country, because we are becoming so race conscious, and in a way that is not, that is creating problems, just like the old racist segregation issues did, but in different ways. Not at all helpful. Now, there are liabilities that the President Biden is facing. One of them is Vice President Harris, in which she was brought into a degree of competency. Now, I mentioned the other day when I had the picture of the House managers, and I said, I pointed to Val Deming, who I said, I wish she was vice president. Now, she would be liberal, and she was a black lady from Florida. Anyone ever hear of her? Val Deming. She was running for the Senate and lost, but she was a congresswoman, and she was a former cop, police chief in Orlando. If she had been vice president and was given the task of controlling the border, if she wanted to, she could have done it. Because she was a competent person. I may not agree with what she was doing, but I know that she could get it done. But they said they couldn't use her because she was a cop. And at that point, the Democrats were anti-cop. But if they were looking for African-American women to be vice president, they could have picked, there were many other such individuals that would have had greater credibility. But Vice President Harris came in with great hopes, but things have not worked out as well as they would like. She has issues with her communication skills. She has not demonstrated significant abilities in accomplishing the tasks that have been given to her. She is planning to be the nominee if President Biden is re-nominated by the Democratic Party for another term. Biden's family foreign connections, whether it's himself or his son or his brother or his former daughter-in-law or whomever else, the Biden family has definitely benefited from his time in office. And those connections are being investigated by a Kentucky congressman, Comer, who's from Western Kentucky, and we will see what comes of that. There's some issue of his age, which if he is reelected and serves throughout his entire term, he will almost be 90 years old, somewhere around 87 years old when he retires from the presidency. And that is an issue. I don't think the founding fathers ever really expected someone to be president at that age, although they were worried about immaturity. You had to be so old before you had the experience to be president. And there's also some issues of cognitive decline. And then there's the lack of press access. He refuses to take questions. And when he does, he demonstrates a testiness, which he's always had to some degree, but some people, when they get older and they are unable to think on their feet and they have a bit of a temper, that can come out in their general interactions with people. And that seems to be the case with him. So that is a concern. He has announced that he is running for re-election, but he may plan on campaigning from the basement of his beach house in Wilmington. And because there are no planned Democratic debates or campaign events in which he will be confronted by any of the other candidates running on the Democratic side. Because the DNC doesn't want to admit that Robert Kennedy Jr., who I must admit seems sane, the son of the former senator who was assassinated in 1968. He's running for president, and Marianne Williamson, who is sort of a new age yoga instructor, but she's a little weird in some ways, but putting her on the stage, she might actually make some sense here and there. I don't know, but Marianne Williamson, those two people, if they're running as Democrats, the Democrats should have a choice. On the Republican side, there is a significant number of those who are rising in the Republican Party. Kristi Noem, who's up there at the top, she's not running for president, at least not now, but she's the governor of South Dakota, who probably kept her state open during the COVID situation more than any other governor. Tim Scott, who I really like, this gentleman there is the senator from South Carolina, and he's running for president. And his main claim to fame is that he has gone from the cotton fields to Congress in one generation. His mother is a single mom who raised him and his brothers and sisters doing odd jobs on welfare, those types of things. And now he's the senator. He's a great evangelical too. I don't know that he's running for president to be president, but I'm hoping that he is in the cabinet or vice president in the next Republican administration. Ron DeSantis obviously is running for Florida. He's like a friendlier version of Trump. He's a Trumpist who actually knows how to get things done, not just make silly tweets. And so he really scares the Democrats. Nikki Haley is the former governor of South Carolina. They would make a great pair. An Indian woman from India and an African-American vice president, but you can't have two candidates from the same state. Elise Stefanik, I don't have her up here, picture anymore, but she is the chairman of the Republican Conference, and she's a congresswoman from upstate New York. Very impressive woman. And Mike Pence, former vice president, who very well may be president someday himself. You might see him run this time around challenging Trump for the nomination. Those two have had a falling out during the January 6th issue, so there's no way that they'll run together. I don't really know if President Trump is renominated, who his vice president will be. Now, looking at a few of these things, the world economy in today's world is more known by globalization. A common market for the world enhanced by multinational corporations. And up until the pandemic, one of the big things was supply chains. International supply chains were essential because everything in the world was coordinated together. You would get parts from this part of the world, parts from this part of the world, move them here, assemble them, ship them out. And when that kind of thing got disrupted, there was a real sense of uncertainty about the future. Outsourcing was another issue. The process of work flowing to where the labor is cheapest. This may be a problem of the globalized economy, but with the present issue as it relates to the global supply chain, this may no longer be a big issue. Women in the workplace, there were those who believed that a glass ceiling limited the advancement of women in a place in much of the developing world, that women may be told they can ascend to a certain level, but when you get so high, you find that you are not able to do that. This is a picture from back from the 40s when women were out working in industry. Then, and this gentleman here, Muhammad Yunus, I should probably change this picture because his company went bankrupt, but nonetheless, this was a new solution to an old problem of financing. This company, which was Grimman Bank, was a company that would allow you to loan money to people who only needed a small amount of money, let's say in the middle of Rwanda or in Papua New Guinea or some other place like that, to start their business or to have enough money to buy crops. And you might be able to invest money in his company. He would loan it to them at an interest rate that was affordable, and then they would pay you back, and then you would earn money on your interest. The problem was that this sounds like a great idea, but many of the individuals who were getting these loans were not able to pay them back, and the interest defaulted, and as a result, many of these microfinance companies went under. DNA issues, which James Watson and Francis Crick developed the structure that we see now of the DNA molecule, which was in 1953, and started the process of mapping how human beings are organized genetically. This led to research which saw the cloning of animals, the beginning of which was this sheep right here, Dolly. Is that a sound from her? Now, cloning has become more and more of an issue. Genetically modified organisms have been used to great many uses, such as developing crops that might resist, like strawberries that resist frostbite, and you can plant them in colder temperatures, or fish that may produce more muscle, and as a result they are farmed and have more fish on them, all kinds of things of that nature. This helped begin what was thought to be a green revolution in the developing world. And then the development of the silicon chip, which replaced vacuum tube technology and made personal computers and your phones and other things possible. And the smaller and smaller these are, and more developed they are, the smaller and smaller our electronic devices can become. How would you think if you had to have those big vacuum tubes in your computer? I mean, they would fill, a computer like we use would fill this building. It's amazing what initially the size that you needed in order to make something like this work. The perils of technology. Personal communities of cyberspace and virtual reality. Online communities pitched primarily to young people, but now maybe to anyone. In my notes, I have MySpace. Anyone ever heard of that these days? Does that still exist? If it is, almost no one uses that. It was replaced by Facebook and then Twitter, and now Twitter is evil because it's owned by Elon Musk.
Coming soon, Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, maybe he'll work for Twitter someday. I think Trump should pick him for his vice presidential running mate.
That's a really interesting idea.
YouTube, online community that permits users to upload video clips, and that is owned by Google now. And then networking community global garage sale. At one time it was something that really did impact things like want ads, personal ads, things of that nature in newspapers. That almost has disappeared because of many of these devices or other things that do that same sort of thing online. People don't buy a newspaper to see what someone is selling across the town. You can do that online. And there's many of these types of websites that deal with this. Here, eBay, of course, I've never sold anything on eBay. I've bought a few things from them. But that people make their money doing this. I'm amazed at how people can make a living on YouTube. I've been recently watching this gentleman who drives around with his RV and is going different places, and then he shows you the videos, and you can buy hats and merchandise from his little store. It is said that the man probably makes profit about $150,000 a year doing that. That, I think, is a job I would love to have. Wouldn't want to deal with the RV, but I could just travel around and film myself and make that a part of my way of living.
Berwin's next.
Berwin thinks he's a YouTuber. He tells people that when we meet them, like, "Hi, I'm Berwin and I'm a YouTuber."
Triple B.
Yeah. So who knows? I think maybe he's like Ryan, Berwin's World.
Yeah.
I mean, that man, that boy and their family are multi-millionaires 100 times over because of the videos that he made on YouTube evaluating toys originally. People on the move in a changing world. Immigration is a huge problem. And it's not just people traveling across borders, but people are traveling across the world just to get to borders. Poor immigrants sent work, money back to their home countries. It's always been something for people to come to America or other Western countries, earn income and send it back home. They only keep out the bare minimum they need to live on. That's happened a long time. Anti-immigrant settlement led to Islamophobia in many Western countries. In Germany, began to invite guest workers in the 1960s on the assumption that they would return home, but they didn't. In 2007, illegal immigration became a major political issue in the United States, especially because of things that Donald Trump said about them. Donald Trump was elected president on the promise that he was going to get illegal immigration under control by building a wall on the southern border. And he did build much of a wall. This is the border right on the Pacific Ocean. This picture is from the Mexican side, people climbing the fence. The fence now extends out into the ocean. There. Now, that was already there. That was already there. That's not the wall that Trump built. Gender and family. Things have sure changed. Television series like Father Knows Best, in the 1950s presented iconic presentation of American family. In 2001, Holland became the first nation in the world to legalize same-sex marriage outright. And there was a progress of this here in the United States. In 1996, when answering a question, Obama said, "I favor legalizing same-sex marriage," was the answer included in a signed questionnaire to a Chicago gay community newspaper. He was running at the time for the Illinois Senate. In 2011, a White House aide said someone else filled out the form without his knowledge, because by that time, it was becoming an issue in his presidential campaign, and when you're getting elected in Chicago, back then you could be pro-gay, but over the whole nation, no. In 2004, then U.S. Senate candidate Barack Obama tells Chicago Public Television marriage is between a man and a woman. In an interview, President Obama said that he wanted to ensure that gays and lesbians have the rights of citizenship, as if they didn't already.
Wait, what?
But noted, I don't think marriage is a civil right. So a person doesn't have the right to get married, and therefore, it is not a right of citizenship to be married. Otherwise, so that shows an assumption that he was trying to make the case that people, if certain peoples, if their behavior restrict them in their ability to certain issues, that they are not necessarily full citizens. In 2008, and I remember watching this when this happened. 2008, Obama running for president there was a summit at Rick Warren's church in which both he and McCain were asked questions, and by Rick Warren at the church. And it was an unmitigated disaster for Obama. McCain did so-so. I'll never forget, McCain was asked what his biggest moral failure was or regret, and he said it was the failure of his first marriage, which I thought took a lot of guts. And such. But Obama said marriage should be limited to unions between one man and one woman. He said, for me as a Christian, it is also a sacred union. God is in the mix. He is in an so that they're in a Christian setting, he was a Christian who would support a more biblical idea of what it meant to be married. In 2010, after signing of repeal of the ban on gays serving openly in the military, Obama told reporters that my feelings on this issue are constantly evolving. By the next year, I'm still working on it, Obama told ABC News when asked if he would change his mind on gay marriage before the 2012 Olympics. Unfortunately, Vice President Biden, who was always known for getting ahead of things, said that he supported gay marriage in a speech, forcing Obama out of the closet on this issue prior to when he wanted to. He was hoping to get through the election and then do something about it if he wanted. In 2012, I think same-sex couples should be able to get married, Mr. Obama tells an interviewer for ABC. Now, today, or at least during the end there, was a major advocate for marriage equality, declared the Defense of Marriage Act unconstitutional, celebrated the overturning of California Prop 8 by calling the plaintiffs and illuminating the White House in rainbow colors, called for the congratulation of the first NBA player to proclaim his homosexuality, and in the second inaugural address, he equated Seneca Falls, Selma, and Stonewall as the three pivotal moments of American civil rights. Of course, if anyone knows, Seneca Falls was a Christian event, in fact, a holiness event, at the Wesleyan Chapel in Seneca Falls, where the Women's Rights Convention was first held. And Selma, Alabama was a religious event where the African Americans, Martin Luther King and others, marched for civil rights through Selma, whereas Stonewall is a riot at the Stonewall Gay Bar in New York, which is considered to be the modern, beginning of the modern gay rights movement. The nation has dramatically changed on its feelings. In fact, now, if you aren't for gay marriage, you're an evil person. It used to be courageous to come out for gay marriage, but you could tell that they were like, you're courageous, but that's a good thing. Now, if someone says that they are against gay marriage, it's, you're not courageous at all. But it takes more courage to do that than it ever did for someone to be for gay marriage in the past. The transgender movement is completely out of control. Bruce Jenner becomes Caitlyn Jenner. When he came out as a she, they said he was courageous. But I will tell you that it was more courageous for him to come out as a transgendered Republican in California. I think that was even more courageous. So this is it. The bathroom issue, when they passed the law in North Carolina and state said they couldn't do business there. The state of California now has almost half the states that they cannot officially travel to in order to conduct state business, because those states are seen as having values California does not agree with. Almost half the country. And this person, I'm not sure what to call
I guess.
him, her. Anyone who's permanently smiling like that just drives me nuts. But this is the face of transgenderism today in America. Brian doesn't, and this, if it's a girl now, has not changed her name to a female name. Brian is the gentleman who was sponsoring, Bud Light, which I've been boycotting all along, but didn't do any good for one way or the other. It's just, there's just something completely unnatural. I mean, when you watch any of her videos of how she was transitioning every day, she did a different video, which you can find on TikTok, my first day of being a girl, 2, 3, 4. My favorite one is number 66, because it is so hilarious. She's scared of a bug. She's partway through her frolicking through the forest. But if you think this is what women are really like, I mean, it's embarrassing. And today, someone like that is seen as more of a woman than actual women are. Because if you deny that this person is actually a woman, you're not quite sure if that person is actually seeing the life as it actually is. So I'm not sure how more confused things can be. You know, when we talk about the future, you know, that the world will get itself into a mess that it can't get itself out of on its own anymore. How in Noah's day, the situation was so degraded that humans couldn't function anymore on their own. That is the kind of society that the world will be in when Christ returns. It doesn't mean that there will only be 1 or 2 Christians left, but it's going to be a world that is just out of control. And there's no hope for redemption. Humans can't solve the problem. And then we have another thing that I haven't even put in here yet, is all of this artificial intelligence stuff that will completely exacerbate every other issue. Other challenges, rogue states, North Korea and Iran. I don't necessarily see that as big of a problem, because we have other things that are going to be we're going to disintegrate from inside because of other kinds of corruption before we're attacked by the Iranians. We'll be attacked by them because we're already in chaos. Organized crime and disorganized crime. Just rampant lawlessness is a problem. Non-state actors such as terrorist groups, which are not part of any civic society like the PLO or FARC or other groups like that, create new problems for the international world. And looming environmental threats that are facing the world. And I don't even think Bono can save us. He would like to, but I think it's too far gone even for that. So we are at the end for this. So we'll see you test time.
Bless him.